Hey everyone, today we have another episode here for you today. But before we start, I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer. This information is for educational purposes only, so please consult your primary care physician if you have any questions about your health. All right, so I'm super excited because we have an awesome guest today. This is Dr. Diana. You can say your last name because I like the way you say it. And she is an ADHD coach for physicians. And we're going to talk about ADHD. We're going to talk about behavioral changes. And we hope that this information is extremely beneficial to you. All right. So, Dr. Diana, welcome.
Thank you. Yes, so my name is Dr. Diana Mercado-Marmarosh, and I am a family medicine physician, and I am also an ADHD coach for physicians. And so family medicine physician has many roles that you can go into. So medical students, listen up. This is the best of all worlds because you get to decide if you want to see kids or if you want to see elderly. Like, for example, this morning I was at the nursing home, or you could work at the clinic, or if you decide that you want to take care of prenatal ladies, you could also do prenatal care. And even if you want to deliver them, you could do that. I don't do that part because babies are unpredictable and you will never sleep. So I leave that job to the OBGYNs, but at least you could do that if you wanted to. So I wanted to just point that out because many family medicine can have many roles. So if you're somebody who can get bored easily, maybe this is a field for you because it'll definitely keep you on your toes.
Yeah, definitely. You're like a jack of all trades, so that's really cool. So tell the audience a little bit about your story and how you ended up as an ADHD coach for physicians, because it's so cool.
Awesome. Yes. So I myself have the diagnosis of ADHD. I got diagnosed during my first semester during medical school. And it's typical in the sense that females usually don't get diagnosed until later in age. And it's because there's not a lot of studies that talk about how females are. Now more information is coming out, but then there wasn't a lot of studies. It was mainly about kids, males in particular, because they didn't want to really look into the estrogen part of it, like the hormonal stuff that females go through in menopause. When they're going through menstrual periods, and especially not even later in menopause. So anytime it has to do with hormones, they didn't really want to take that into the equation. And so they figured it was easier to deal with understanding the males who don't have that change in behavior. Why am I saying this? Well, because females tend to be missed until later on, whenever they get either into a higher education or have a job that all of a sudden requires more executive function, or they have the birth of their kid, or again, they go through menopause. So those changes can aggravate ADHD. So how did I become a coach? Well, when I got diagnosed, to me, I didn't really think that was my diagnosis because everybody around me, like my family specifically, like had a little bit of me, and I didn't think that was a problem. Like I thought we were a little bit forgetful. Maybe we had multiple phone replacements a year, or losing our keys, or maybe a little messy or whatever. But anything that we like to do, we hyper focused on. And so I just assumed that that was the norm. At that point, I thought I was either depressed or anxious because my dad had stomach cancer. So anyways, when I got the diagnosis, I was really ashamed. I felt like I was broken. I felt like I was unworthy because in my mind, I was the oldest, and that meant that I had to be perfect. And so the diagnosis to me meant I was no longer perfect. So it was really like an identity shock. And I didn't really want to tell anybody because a part of me already had a little bit of imposter syndrome, thinking like, oh my God, I'm one of 20 out of my class of 220 that doesn't look like everybody else. And so I didn't want to stand out even more in my mind. For a bad thing. Like I didn't want them to know that I was not good enough to be in that class, right? And so the point is that I maybe shared it with 3 people that I had ADHD. And then, of course, the pandemic hits. And then you can't really hide something like that anymore because all the systems that you had in place um, kind of are not enough. And so I actually, quote unquote, neglected or ignored my own diagnosis for 10 years after I finished residency, because when I got told, okay, you're an attending now, go see, a regular attending physician, don't just come to the student clinic. When I did that, unfortunately, the psychiatrist who saw me didn't really want to address it. He just basically walked in and walked out within 2 minutes of the appointment and said, you're a physician, you should know better, you outgrow ADHD. And again, I already felt ashamed, and so I internalized that instead of like questioning that and being like, oh my God, you're one of like thousands of psychiatrists here in Houston, like I can go find another one, like and get a second opinion. I just neglected it. So now the pandemic hits and I realized that something has to change. I was one of many people who, probably most physicians are always going to be life learners, right? Like you're always looking to level up and do different things. But a part of me always felt like I wasn't enough, or felt like if I just buy one more book, I will figure this system out. Or if I just listen to this one more podcast, like my hot mess is not going to be such a hot mess. Like I kept, and even if I bought them, I wouldn't read them. I had the best intentions, but I was just not getting around to them because I was just trying to paddle, right? And so one day I came across a podcast that was called a Doctor's Panel, and it was by 5 different physicians. And one of those physicians was Dr. Sunny Smith. And she talked about empowering women physician. It was a program that was meant to give you credits for your learning, and it was supposed to talk about well-being and stuff like that. And honestly, she had us do a questionnaire that asked about burnout. And like in my mind, I was not on burnout. I was just doing my typical thing. Like, what is a person to do, right? Later on, I realized I was burned out and I didn't even know. Sometimes burnout is being irritable with other people, or being snappy, or feeling like you're not carrying your load at home, or you're not enjoying things that you used to. And so I then realized that my ADHD was a neutral circumstance, that it was whatever my thoughts I was having around that would make all the difference. So then I came to realize, well, I could see it as a gift, because maybe that was the reason I'm very outspoken and I say what I'm thinking, and no BS is going to get past me and I can make change. And maybe that's why I became the chief medical officer, and the chief resident, and why I kept getting promoted in different places, because I kept talking, right? And so I joke, I have diarrhea of the mouth. So the thing is that maybe my stubbornness and not being willing to give up after like 3 attempts of something that didn't work out, because I didn't know how it was going to work out. Trial and error finally gets me to where I need to be. Um, I realized maybe it didn't have to be that hard. Maybe I shouldn't have to do 10 attempts. Maybe I should not neglect my own diagnosis and seek medical professional help, plus also become on it from a curiosity point of like, how do I best learn? Like, how do other people best learn that they have ADHD? And I learned to not see it as anything else, but just like high blood pressure, you have to get educated on what salt or not salt to use in your diet, right? If you have diabetes, you have to get educated. Like, how do I control that, right? So I started to become curious. And then I realized that even though I was invested in myself with medications and life coaching, then I found ADHD coaching. Even though I was doing all those things, I didn't necessarily see anybody who was an ADHD coach for physicians, right? So then I said, maybe I can use that and like tap into it. And the thing is, like, many of us, even though you might have ADHD and you're not even aware, because again, you are so used to working harder than usual and maybe having unopened charts and hot messes, or constantly living in overwhelm, like that's your norm. And you don't realize that this is going on. But I say all this because it's important because you might diagnose your colleague and your colleague might not even have any clue because that's the way they've been all their life, right? And so if you know somebody who's struggling, who's showing up to clinic late, who is always behind on charts, who's a little snappy because there's one too many responsibilities on their plate, they might want to get evaluated for ADHD because it's not like they're doing it on purpose. Because believe me, we're one of the most hardworking people. It's just that we don't have the right systems in place and we don't know any better because nobody told us any better, right? So that's why I am an ADHD life coach, to close in that gap, to get rid of that shame that is within us, because we are our worst critic in general. Like as human beings, we have a brain that tells us that we're not good enough, blah, 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 blah. But then you throw ADHD onto there and you get all this emotional dysregulation, and forget it. We go from 0 to 180 and then we don't even stand ourselves. So it's important to have good techniques to be able to deal with this. And exercise, this is why we're talking to Dr. Benoit too, is one of the ways that totally helps us with the dopamine that our brain does not have as readily available as other people who don't have ADHD.
Yeah, man, that's such an amazing story. I love, the mind shift that you started being mindfully curious about ADHD, instead of, evaluating it and hyper criticizing yourself, as you said. You started getting curious. And sometimes, our brains, there's so much plasticity that our brains have. And it's just amazing how we have the ability to, change our thoughts, and which is, what you did. So that's such an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, the next question. So my story, was birthed from a desire to reduce the pill burden on my patients and prevent chronic disease. And I really wanted to err on the side of teaching, patients, clients how to make small incremental habit changes to improve their health and well-being. So what are some behavioral changes that, that can help someone with ADHD as an alternative to medication?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. Although like 80 to 90% of people who have ADHD are able to tolerate meds, you still have that 10 to 20% of people who are not able to tolerate meds. And that's both stimulants or non-stimulants, right? And so exercise becomes your medication, right? And that's like so critical. Now, you can still, of course, exercise and enhance your medication if you're the lucky one to be able to make that medicine work, right? But it goes back to the fact that most of us, when we think exercise, I don't know about you, but most of us think like, oh my God, that's too hard. You wanted me to run a marathon? Or like, that's what people automatically think. Like they associate exercise with like something that's like, I don't know, climbing a mountain. And mind
Right.
you, we have friends who do that for fun, right? But I'm going to be the one who's going to get on the train to go up the mountain. I'm not going to be climbing the mountain. I'll get off once I'm there, right? But I'm not going to take that long strike. I do like to go for walks and hikes, but not to that extreme, right? And
Mhm.
our brain tells us that we have to be at that other extreme in order to be able to use exercise as a way to help our ADHD. And that's not the case. There's actually studies that show that even like 3 to 5 minute boosts of energy by exercising, either going up the stairs, going for a walk, jumping rope, dancing, like turning on some salsa music or reggaeton or some hip hop or jazz, whatever, like movement is going to activate and get your brain to refocus on things. And so, one of the tricks that I tell my clients is that when you're doing a task that is boring or a task that you're not so like, ooh, I can't wait to jump into it, one of the habits, like you were asking, is to habit stack. So do something that you love to do with something that you don't quite like to do. So, for example, let's do my charts. So I'll put on a timer for 20 minutes and then the timer usually has 2 sets. So on the bottom, I'll put 5 minutes. So for 20 minutes, I'll try to focus on what I'm doing. And by focus, I mean, hide my phone from myself so I'm not on Facebook and, the things that I know I want to do that I shouldn't be doing. So I'm making it invisible, the distractions that are going to distract me, I'm making those invisible, and I'm making the stuff easier by having that focused time. And then knowing that at 5 minutes, after the 20 minutes are done, I'm going to do something that's going to be fun for me. So at that point, I turn on my music and I dance, or I go out for a walk, do something that gets my energy going so that my dopamine levels goes up, and then I can actually refocus again if I'm going to do it. And so that is a habit stacking that gets you to do something that you love, like hearing your favorite music or something like that, with something you're not like so keen on, but you gotta get going or you gotta do, right? Because, well, we all want to keep our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to get paid, right?
Right.
And so now I've learned to also shift my mind. I know I don't want to do it later. um, I don't want to do it now, but I definitely don't want to do it for a lot longer later. So I will encourage myself to do it as much as I can. And I think about it like a love letter, like I'm writing a love letter about the encounter that I had with my patient. Mind you, 90% of those notes don't go anywhere, which is good because we don't need to be writing books, although our brain tells us we do.
Mm-hmm.
So just a quick chapter, okay? Not the whole book.
Right. You're preaching
And
to the choir.
exactly, right? And sometimes I joke about my surgery friends, although I have amazing surgery friends. I'm like, I wish I was a surgeon. I just have to write on there, patient is alive. I see them
Right.
breathing, and then they move on, the leg is still intact or whatever. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, that's how I feel when I read their notes. And I'm like, it's just a skeleton note. Patient is alive. Okay, great. But at the same time, I think they got it right. Like, why put all that fluff? Just put
Right.
like whatever happened and then move on, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so we got to take some stuff from them and implement it.
Yeah, yeah. And I like, so I used to have the same problem with my notes, and I used to tell myself, I'm like, okay, if another doctor were to read this, like, what do they need to know, right? Because it's also a way that health professionals communicate with each other. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's another tip.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Because most of us, what are we gonna do? We're gonna go straight to the assessment and plan, right? We're not
exactly.
we're not gonna be like, ooh, let me see the whole thing. No, we're gonna go to the meat and potatoes, right? We're gonna go straight to the to the core.
Exactly, exactly. We just scroll, 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 scroll down. All right. So according to the 2018 physical activity guidelines, exercise, as you elicited earlier, helps a lot with improving our cognitive skills, particularly attention and inhibition. So like helps to decrease impulsivity. Just, for you, are there any exercises that help you work on those specific areas, more specifically attention and decreasing impulsivity?
Yes. So I can't even say exercise because, well, so I don't know if you heard of yoga nidra. So
Oh, yes.
yoga nidra is like a misnomer, almost because maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. But when you think of yoga, like you're thinking of all these stretches and all these things that you're doing, right? It's a form of exercise, a little bit more relaxing. But yoga nidra is special because it's kind of like a mixture of meditation and it, yes, while you do stretch a little bit, there's parts where it asks you to kind of just relax or lay down and like try to stay still and try to concentrate on whatever they're guiding you through. So that's a form of, again, attention and like decreasing the impulsivity, because your brain wants to go in 10,000 places, right? And
Right.
then this kind of helps you to focus it back. And again, a lot of people, when they think of meditation, the first thing they think is like, oh my god, they wanted me to be sitting for like 2 hours or something. And our brain always goes to that extreme. But again, 3 to 5 minutes can make a big difference. Think about it like putting money into the bank, like small little deposits like there's still deposits. So it's
Mm-hmm.
still gonna add up versus no deposits. You're just withdrawing, like getting yourself tired and not resting and not recharging. You're gonna have a negative balance. You're gonna be in trouble, right? And that's how we burn out. And so I do realize that doing that, or again, dancing gets me to like calm down, because when I'm irritable or moody, I mean, it's crazy how you just turn on something for like 30 seconds and boom, like you're snap out of it, because it brings you to a different place. It just elevates your vibration. And so I always, so it decreases your impulsivity, because when you become like irritated or frustrated, is usually because there's too many inputs coming your way that you can't prioritize. Even though you want to, you can't seem to prioritize it fast enough. And at that time, you probably neglected something. You probably didn't eat, you didn't drink, or you didn't like ask yourself, what is one thing I can do at a time, right? So exercise helps you to, any form of exercise, whether you go play golf, whether you go swimming, whether you do karate, whether you do um, ballet. I'm not that type of person that can do ballet. That takes too much coordination. I'm usually a girl on the floor, So, but I mean, like we have the famous gymnast that she has ADHD, right? And she was won all the medals, right? So again, it's all these exercises help you to focus and become disciplined, and the more that you do them, the better that you get. And there's some studies that show that doing certain things like trying to change your clothes while you're standing on one foot, um, it requires a special type of attention that activates your cerebrum, and that can actually improve your ADHD. Dr. Hollowell from the book ADHD 2.0, he talks about how some people use, like they literally get a prescription to go do like cerebral exercises to improve their ADHD, which I haven't
Wow.
tried that, but they said that supposedly it's supposed to improve, right? And then one of the exercises they say is to stand on your foot on one leg and try to like put on your clothes and then try the other, because it takes a lot more coordination than you think. And so again, focus, right? It forces you to focus on the things that you're doing. So yeah, so there's a lot of information that is kind of cool. But one other thing to notice is that, in some schools, like in Colorado, they have time ins instead of time outs. So when people, little kids or even high school people are like misbehaving or talking out of turn or being hyperactive, instead of putting them in timeout, they tell them, okay, get on the stationary bike, or they'll turn on music or whatever. And even if it's 5 minutes, that gets them back into the tune, and their grades have actually improved, because again, those dopamine hits and their behavior overall has gotten better. And sometimes they joke, like, are they just purposely getting in trouble so they could exercise? Maybe we should like put that more into the routine of the things. But yeah, interesting how people just try different things and then they realize what might help.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I need to check out those cerebral exercises. That's pretty cool. Just more on the topic of exercise. And we spoke about earlier how people with ADHD can have problems with being attentive, and to speak about exercise maintenance, as you've spoken about previously, it's important to keep activities fun and stimulating to encourage motivation and positive feedback. And you mentioned dancing earlier, so this is like a fun question. Is there like a particular dance that you like to do, or do you even dance to help with any ADHD symptoms?
Yeah, I love salsa music,
Uh huh.
merengue music, reggaeton music,
Uh huh.
anything high upbeat, I love that. It just, like I said, it just gets you out of your head quickly because it's so um, energizing, And even if you're mad, like you can't be mad longer than 30 seconds because it just takes you somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, in terms of the habits, um, when you're trying to start something, if you're not somebody who normally exercises and you're like, maybe I should try that, or let me get curious whether you have ADHD or not, and you just like wondering whether this trick would work for you if you're getting mad or if you're getting frustrated or, you're having a day, I mean, just give it a try and see. But if you are intentionally going to start from zero, you have to have smart goals. What that means is you have to know when you're going to do it and at what time and for how long,
Mhm.
because otherwise it's never going to happen. If you just say, oh, well, one day I'll exercise, well, that one day does not have a day, right? If it's not in
Right.
your calendar.
Right.
So don't wait till the Mondays, don't wait till the beginning of the month, like today is the best day, and just start.
Mhm.
And don't be trying to do, like, again, 40 minutes if you haven't done anything. Start with 5, and then
Right.
it sounds silly, but you are now becoming a person who does a certain thing, right? And so
Mhm.
you got to make sure to do that. So how do you have positive feedback? How do you motivate yourself? you know, Sometimes we have to act like we're teenagers, like we have to give ourselves stickers or rewards, even, and then sometimes it's counterproductive. Like, I'll give myself a snicker. You're like, well, you're trying to exercise. Why are you giving yourself a snicker? I'm like, hey, I have to reward myself somehow, right?
Yeah.
But, it is just like everything. If you all of a sudden start exercising, you're not going to go get all the junk food because you feel proud that you just did certain things, right? You just become a different person when you're in that environment.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's the small incremental changes, because once we perform those small incremental changes, that helps improve our self confidence, and it helps our self confidence to even make even greater incremental changes. And that's how we, shape our identity. It's about what we do in the process to shape who we become. So that's amazing, man. Thank you so much, for sharing your story, for all those tips and strategies, for ADHD. Now, this concludes the end of our talk, but if there's a physician, who's listening and they have ADHD or may have symptoms of ADHD, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah. So send them over to my website. It's adhd-lifecoach.com. Now, if they want to find me on Instagram, they're welcome to find me at Beyond ADHD Life Coach. And I also have a podcast, which I'll give you all the details. But now I'm even on TikTok, and apparently I just got an email from Dr. Hollowell said we could do TikToks together. So you might see me a lot more often now. But just reach out. Don't think that that you're a lost cause. I'll have a lot of people who come to me and they say, I don't think you can help me because nobody's helped me before. And the thing is that that's not true. The thing is, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And it probably hasn't helped because they have tried to change the way you normally do things. And it's not about changing your whole structure. We need to not try to put you in the box that you don't think like everybody else who's in that box. We need to find your strengths and tap into that zone of genius so that you can create your systems that support that, because everybody in this world has our own unique gifts, right? And when we start comparing each other, we get ourselves in trouble. But when we start to compare ourselves, like from a positive way, like how can I level up this, or how can I improve this, or what works or what doesn't work for me, then that's where the change happens, right? So, first of all, you have to be willing to know that yes, there's help for you. Yes, there's hope, right? If I went from 300 charts open for 10 years to now everything closed in the last year and a half, you can do it too. Okay. I went from charting 20 hours outside of work to like nothing. Now I have my own business on the side, plus being full time and having, kids that are 3 and 4 and a husband and everything else in between. But whatever you focus your time and intention to is what becomes your priority. So you have to make sure that you prioritize you, because you're the most important asset in your life.
Man, so much gold there, so much. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Diana. And just to let you know that I'm also on Instagram as well at MedFitDO. And if you're an ADHD physician, um, some people with ADHD can also have chronic diseases such as obesity and hypertension. So if that is you, you can schedule a one-on-one call with me. And all our links will be in our bio, in my bio. So you can find Dr. Diana, you can find me. And yep, I hope this was super helpful for you. Thank you so much, Dr. Diana, for coming on.
Yes, thank you. It was so fun.
Yes. All right. Bye.